I'm just on autopilot. I'm doing something I hate. I'm doing something I don't believe in. And what the hell's wrong with me? Like, why am I doing this? The response I got from my colleagues when I said, yeah, I'm not going to work as a doctor now was amazing. It was like, good for you. I wish I had the guts to do that.
Are you at a crossroads in your career? Ready for a change, but you're not sure how to get there? Don't worry, we are about to produce your best life together. Welcome to the Second Act Success podcast. I am your host, Shannon Russell. I am a former television producer turned boy mom. I left my dream job to find family balance, and in doing so, I produced my dream life. Now I am a business owner, podcaster, and career coach. My mission is to help other women like you find what they are truly meant to be doing. If you are ready to start over in your career or pivot to a new purpose, then get ready to be inspired by stories of women who have done just that. We will share advice and actionable tips to motivate you as you move along on your path. It is time to shine, so let's start producing your balanced life of abundance today. This is Second Act Success. For decades now, becoming a doctor has been a dream of many children and their parents. Most recently, Ellie Sparkles from the hit YouTube channel polled over 1,000 5 to 8-year-olds and asked them what they wanted to be when they grow up. And guess what they said? A healthcare professional. However, things are definitely changing. And on this episode of the Second Act Success Career Podcast, I have a fascinating conversation to share with you with Dr. Debra Blaine. Debra has practiced medicine for over 30 years in New York. When Debra became disheartened with the drastic changes she saw occurring in the healthcare industry, she pivoted quickly and started a second act as an author. Debra now has 3 published books, and she coaches other healthcare workers and writers. Here is my interview with Dr. Debra Blaine. All right, I have Debra Blaine here with me. Hi, Debra. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to hear all about your super interesting journey. Why don't you tell me where everything started, maybe from college, let's say?
From college. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. And I really love what you're doing. I just think it's so important to inspire women, especially to follow their dreams. I started college as a pre-med major because I was kind of told that I should be a doctor. In my family, the only 3 acceptable professions were doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I started as a pre-med major, but I was away from home and I felt like I could do whatever I wanted. I was in an honors humanities program at the University of Texas at Austin, and you just had to concentrate, but they had a pre-med program that you could go through. So after the first year, I dropped out of the pre-med part and I became a physics major for a short period of time. And then I realized that what I was really interested in physics was relativity theory and quantum mechanics, like the really esoteric, weird stuff. And then I ended up changing and becoming a philosophy major. So I combined that philosophy and Hebrew. So I graduated and I started a graduate program in comparative religion at Temple University. And so I was working for a PhD. And I went home during intercession one year and I succumbed to parental pressure. What are you going to do with a doctorate in comparative religion? I could think of things, but they weren't doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I went back to Texas and took some pre-med classes that I missed, and I went to Baylor College of Medicine and became a doctor.
Were you excited about this, or you were really just...
I don't, when I look back, I can't tell you honestly that I was super, super excited. I felt very accomplished. And then I came back to New York for residency. I started in psychiatry, and then I ended up going to family practice. And psychiatry would have been a better fit, philosophy, psychiatry.
Yeah.
I'd been kind of all over the place, but I ended up in family practice, and I got married, and I had a child, wonderful, wonderful young man. He's not really that young anymore. He's 30 years old. He's not like a 22-year-old kid. So
Right. He's got his own career.
he has his own career, and he actually became a doctor. I couldn't talk him out of it. And I became really just frustrated. I mean, for a lot of years, I've been getting more and more frustrated. And so have my colleagues. I mean, I'm not alone in there. So it's when we had our 25-year reunion for medical school, and we've since had our 35 this year, which just
Wow.
blows me away. We sat around like, who knew that medicine would end up like this? And my consolation for my son was, well, in 25 years, we never imagined this would happen to medicine. And in another 25 years, anything could happen and it could get much better. So when I got to the point that I was so burned out that I started writing a book. And this is like where everything kind of changed for me because I just would write. Writing a book is daunting. Like when you first take it on, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to write a whole book. And I started writing about different patient encounters and the challenges that we have in trying to just provide appropriate care. How do you get the patient the medication they need or the imaging studies they need or to the specialist they need when they don't have the right insurance? And then how do you deal with the leadership who says, oh, well, the patient has to pay $25 for a nebulizer. And meanwhile, the patient is missing three fingers, is a single parent of three kids and is unemployed because of her fingers. And she says $25 is grocery money. And I actually called, I said, just give it to her. And I emailed the leadership and I said, I'm giving her the nebulizer, which costs us like $1,
Wow.
just for the medicine because the machine's already paid for. I said, if she doesn't, if that's not okay, then I'll pay for her nebulizer. And, they
You.
finally wrote me, they said, oh, this once, we'll let you do it this one time, like don't make a habit of it. I mean, the woman was wheezing and she could hardly breathe. I couldn't let her out the door. This was pre-COVID. And then we have all these, the other side, which is the very privileged, demanding, I want what I want when I want it, which is right now or yesterday. So it's, I want my Z-Pack or I want the MRI on my shoulder I felt 30 minutes ago. No, we don't do that. There's just a lot of problems with that. So I started writing this book, and the book was a bunch of patient encounters. And in the patient encounters, each scenario was something that I actually experienced.
Mm.
I changed the names and I changed the circumstances just enough that you couldn't recognize who it was. Then it got to be a whole different experience. It was like the more outrageous my encounter, the better fodder it was for the book.
And
And it
more
was
fun to write, I bet. You
and more
love
fun
that.
to write. And it became like it completely transformed my experience in the clinic. And I even had colleagues calling me and saying, you won't believe what happened to me today. You have to put this in your book.
That's amazing.
Then I had to decide if it was going to be fiction or nonfiction. And as a nonfiction, there was a lot of liability on me. Which urgent care are you talking about? Which company? Why do you say this? It was just too messy. So I said, okay, I'll make it a fiction.
Mhm.
So when you write fiction, you need a plot, not just a series of encounters. You need a plot. You need a hero. You need a villain. You need obstacles. You need challenges. You need allies. And so I created this plot. The Russian oligarchs hack our electronic medical records, steal the information, and then they use it to extort millions of dollars, and then they murder the patients. And I had so much fun writing it. The thing that I really wanted to accomplish with the book, which I think I did, was that people walked away, they would say, I had no idea that this was happening in medicine. Like now I know why I can't spend more than 3.5 minutes with my doctor and their faces in a computer. You need to keep up with productivity. That means how many patients per hour. And the customer satisfaction surveys. Now they might not like you because they didn't like the coffee creamer selection. They might not like you because they wanted an antibiotic that they really shouldn't have, or because they wanted an MRI that isn't appropriate. Oh, you're not doing a good job. And by the time I finished that book, I realized that I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. Quite an epiphany for me. And I'm not being authentic. I'm just going through my life. I'm just on autopilot. I'm doing something I hate. I'm doing something I don't believe in. And what the hell's wrong with me? Like, why am I doing this?
When was it, I guess, throughout your role as a doctor where things started changing in you and you started noticing more of the business, legal things that were not settling right with you?
Probably about 10 or 15 years ago. It's been a long time, but it started in a very subtle kind of way. Also, a lot of the places that I worked were owned by doctors until very recently. And then what happened was once the practices started getting gobbled up by business ventures, that everything really changed. Every practice, every doctor has to negotiate their own terms or else just take whatever they give you. And the larger the practice, the more money you get.
I had no
So
idea. Wow.
yeah, most people don't. So that's why people end up in these larger practices because not only that, now the government is, demanding that there's all this extra paperwork digital paperwork. And so you need people in the office to take care of that. You need like another salary to pay. And then you need to have more and more people because you're getting paid less and less per patient. So you need more and more patients per hour. It's a business now. It's not like it used to be. You go into medicine because you want to do some good. You're going to make enough money. Your kids will go to school. You'll have a nice house, decent neighborhood. Now it's like these corporate moguls who go into medicine, into healthcare. I don't even call it medicine. They go into the healthcare industry and they do it because, hey, there's a lot of money to be made there. Oh, and by the way, we'll be doing something good. Like the whole focus has changed.
You went into medicine to help people, to help families. And then it started becoming about the surveys and the reviews and the
Hmm.
paperwork. And it's kind of like what people talk about teachers nowadays, right? You used to go when we were younger,
Right.
teachers got to pick their curriculum and, okay, great, I'm in the first grade. This is my lesson plans. And now it's, you don't get a say. You have to hit these requirements.
And teachers now
Similar.
are teaching for the test and not for the knowledge
Yeah.
because it's so important that their students make a certain,
Yep.
hit a certain level on the test, on the exam. So yeah, it's the
And so
same.
doctors, yeah. And so for what you were doing, I bet you, and I hope I'm wrong, that there are some doctors out there that are in it for the money and not for the patients as much. So they'll be fine having their face in the computer, like you said, and not really caring because they need to get that next patient in because that's just more money for them. And I can see where that was a road that you, with your good conscience, just couldn't
I wouldn't
handle.
do it.
Yeah.
So I took 11 months off. I became certified as a coach and I started my second book. It's funny because the response I got from my colleagues when I said, yeah, I'm not going to work as a doctor now was amazing. It was like, I expected them to be like, oh man, what are you doing? Like, you got to stay with us. You've got all this experience. I didn't get that at all. I got good for you. I wish I had the guts to do that. And that's just like so telling is that so often we just continue on doing what we're doing because we don't have the guts to change. Change is terrifying, but change is also liberating, especially for women. There's three stages. I'm simplifying, but so there's before kids, you grow up. What do I want to be when I grow up? And what am I going to do? And where am I going to go? And how am I going to become that? And how am I going to train for that and learn about it? We have children. And the whole focus of life kind of shifts to the children, making sure they have everything they need. And what I need, I'll do it later. I mean, not everybody does that, but I think the majority of women do that. And then the kids grow up. And if we've done a good job, they leave. They're out on their own. They don't need us anymore. And now they're doing their thing. And now it's kind of like you scratch your head and it's like, okay, what did I want to be when I grew up? Who am I? Who am I? I can't remember. I can't remember what was important to me. I can't remember what I dreamt about. I was just so busy worrying about getting them through and providing everything they needed. And it's very confusing, in some ways frightening, curious, but it's also, again, it's a liberating period. So everything I think is the way we look at it. We interpret our reality and we decide what we're going to do with what we're confronted with. So I discovered that I loved writing thrillers and I wanted to write another one. I wrote Undue Influences because I was looking around at our society and the extremism that, is just so rampant and people, families aren't talking to each other, friends aren't talking to each other. This didn't used to be the case. Shannon, you and I used to be able to have a discussion about some political issue. We could have disagreed on every single point, and then we could have said, okay, where are we going for lunch?
1,000%. You're right. It's not like that as much anymore. You just don't talk about it if you think there's a slightest chance of a difference in opinion.
Right. And if you do talk about it and you have that difference of opinion, you know what? I'm not really hungry.
Yes, you're right.
And people
Yes.
don't. So now I'm writing my third. My third is a dystopian fiction. And the takeaway from this one is that there's a very strong likelihood we're going to face extinction if we don't become better human beings. And so that's kind of it's called Pillars of Salt. You know, there's so many platforms to jump on. There's so many petitions to sign. There's so many marches you can go on. There's so many, everything is a crisis. And who wants to hear about another crisis? Who wants to hear, oh, there's a healthcare crisis? Who wants to talk about the extremism that's in our country? So my feeling is that by writing fiction and getting readers emotionally involved in the characters, hopefully you like the characters, you get involved in their lives and you're rooting for them, right? That's what we
Yeah.
do when we read a book. And then the things that they're going through and the questions that come up, there's more of a chance that it will affect someone enough to think about it. They think about it in their own time and in their own way, and they don't feel forced. The whole point of undue influences is to ask people to think and not follow their friends or follow their party or follow their kids, but to actually say, well, is this true for me? And then the big question is, how do I even know what's true for me? Where did I get these beliefs? Because a lot of times we're instilled with beliefs from the time we're very young. And it's not our parents' fault because they have no idea where their own beliefs came from. And they have no idea that they're giving it
Yep.
to us. But we're following in the footsteps, the thought footprints of our parents and then of our teachers and of our friends. And how often do we actually stop and say, well, is that true for me?
Everything aside, what do I think? What do I believe? There really isn't a time where you take that pause and you're just looped into what you were taught and how you were brought up.
I think it used to be too like adolescence. That was like the time when we start to like branch out and think for ourselves. But then it depends on who you're hanging out with and where you are, when you're asking those questions. If you're in a social studies class or an intellectual history class, you're going to ask different questions than if you're hanging out at bars or, going to parties. Right. I feel very strongly that if we don't start to take responsibility, even for our thoughts and then for our actions, we're not going to do well. I mean, we're not on a good road.
Very interesting. What an interesting road and path that you've had and that you continue to go down. I want to break things down a little bit and ask you quite a few questions about different points throughout your journey. You decide, I'm going to go on the road to be a doctor. You saw it changing. And then you said, oh, and then I just started writing a book. Well, where did that come from?
Where did that come from? I wanted to write. I was a humanities major. I couldn't even imagine writing a whole book, but I went to a book talk and it was Ed Hershey, who's a former Newsday reporter, retired. And he wrote a book, The Scorekeeper, and he was talking about the book and he had little vignettes, little sections, little memories. And I thought, well, I can do that. I can do little patient encounters. And each patient encounter is a few pages. I could do that. And so when I did that, then I started to string them together and then I sort of wove this story around them.
It sounds like it was a little getaway for you. Like you had a
It
bad day at
was.
work and let me just write down almost like therapy, right?
It was therapy, it was exactly therapy. I could get through the days and feel like, okay, it's okay that this person was so horrible because I can just write about it and
Yeah, you're
tell other
thanking them.
people, and I would, after I'd come out of the room, I would just scribble a couple of notes, stick it in my pocket. It would remind me of that story and I would just write about it later. The first book is called Code Blue, The Other
Sure.
End of the Stethoscope. It's won an award from the New York City Big Book Awards. I did have a mentor. So I went to this, it's called SEEK, SCAK, but it's for physicians who are interested in non-clinical careers. There's actually a lot of physicians out there who are pivoting into non-clinical career paths. And I found out that there are a lot of physician writers out there. And I met Rich Krivolin. He's a retired professor from Southern California University. And I met with him for 15 minutes and we talked and he said he would be happy to help me if I wanted to look at my stuff. And I had brought the first 30 pages and I gave it to him and I didn't really expect to ever hear from him. But he emailed me about 5 days later. He told me he read it, if he would like to talk and if I wanted to hire him. And I did. And he really helped me. I went to a workshop and he said, okay, you need a plot. And I wrote about one of the most dramatic moments of my life. And it was when I found out my brother was dead. And I wrote that. And when I went and everybody kind of read each other's, that became the book. And we went back and forth with Rich and he would tell me how to create suspense, how to weave it into the story. So now you've got two stories here. You've got what's going on in the clinic and you've got the story about the Russian oligarch and you've got to now blend them together like this. And so I did that and that's it. The rest is history.
Okay, so mentor and going to workshops is something that you would recommend.
In the beginning, I also took an online writer's class. It was $89. It was the best $89 I ever spent. It was the University of Cincinnati, 6 weeks, 2 lessons a week. And it just taught me like the basics that things like you don't change voice in the middle of a paragraph or in the middle of a chapter. If you're in one person's head, you got to stay in that person's head. And you can go to the next person's point of view in the next chapter. It was really helpful. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do stuff like that, but you find a way to just sort of get your feet wet and get a little familiarity.
Probably helps to give you that extra boost of confidence that you're on the right path too.
I actually had finished the book, and that's when I realized I don't want to do this anymore because I looked at what I wrote. By the end of the book, I was like, I'm being inauthentic. I'm not being true to myself. So then I became certified as a coach. And then the pandemic happened. And it was a little bit difficult to be out and about and doing book talks and things like that. And I also had this so stupid, this image of my grandchildren one day saying to me, Grandma, what were you doing during the pandemic of 2020? And I would be saying, oh, yeah, I had quit medicine. I was just sitting it out. And I was embarrassed, you know? So I ended up going back. I worked part time and it gives me health insurance and it pays my mortgage. But otherwise, I'm writing pretty much full time and I'm coaching. I particularly work with doctors who are disgruntled and how to not necessarily leave medicine, but how to make it work for them. They've gotten the proverbial days, the industry has sort of brainwashed doctors, especially younger doctors, into thinking, well, this is the only thing you can do. You're not qualified for anything else. You spent all this money, all this time, and now like you're stuck here. So we got you.
And this is what you're going to do until retirement.
Exactly. So what I do is I help them to understand that that's not the case, that they have this plethora of skills and knowledge, and they have a doctorate. I mean, you have a doctorate in science. Sometimes just having that confidence, what I've learned is that when we change how we look at ourselves, we present ourselves differently to the world. And then the world responds to us differently. And it's almost immediate when you can really, on a deep level, change your self image, everything changes and all kinds of opportunities come your way. And you start to explore things you wouldn't have explored before because you go, oh, I can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? I'm struggling with the whole social media thing. And I'm like, I'm a freaking doctor. I'm going to get this. I allow myself, and many people allow themselves to be intimidated by things and say, well, I don't know how to do that. So I can't do that. We make that equation. I don't know how equals I can't. No, we don't know how to do anything when we start out. We have to learn.
It's so true. I'm thinking about when you went to that conference in California and you're sitting here amongst other writers. Did you just feel like you're in your element? A lot of us have imposter syndrome.
Doctors have that big time.
But now you're there and you're like, no, I'm a writer. The first class you took, the first workshop you took, putting yourself out there. And did it help you to feel like, yes, I am writing. I am a writer too. I'm a doctor, but
So
I'm also a writer.
I didn't quite feel like a writer yet, but what I was feeling is all these people around me could do this. I wasn't different from them. That sense of community that, if you can do it, I could probably do it too, and not feeling like, oh, I'm fighting this uphill battle that nobody can possibly get to the top of that mountain. No, you're climbing with other people and they're all making it. And some of them are ahead of you and some of them are behind you, but we're all on the journey and we help each other along. We share the energy. So, I mean, now I feel like I'm a writer and I am a writer. Now I'm an author, my second book won 2 awards and I feel much more confident about that now. And when I sat down to write this third one, it took me like, I want to say 7 months, maybe 6 months, it kind of flowed. It gets easier and easier each time.
So, how can fiction writing make a more positive impact on the culture of our society than maybe practicing medicine?
There are people that I feel like I've made a deep impact on with medicine and maybe saved their lives or made their lives much easier, diagnosed them faster or something. But I feel like, so I started doing urgent care because I became a single parent when my son was 2. So that was also a struggle. So I feel like the world of urgent care now is, I've been swabbing a lot of noses for COVID, prescribing, little medications here or there, but I don't feel like I'm really contributing to the well-being of the earth, or the people who live on the earth. Whereas with fiction, I feel like if I can get people to think about something that they would not normally have thought about, if I can get them to get involved in it for a few days or however long it takes them to read the book and let it sink in. And then even if maybe later, it occurs to them, well, I'm reacting to this person. I haven't really thought it through. Like, why am I doing that? Or is somebody else controlling the way I think? Because undue influences is about the government, both sides in their own way, literally controlling our minds. And it's outrageous, but is it?
Yeah.
If I can get people to really examine how they're living their life, I feel like that's a more positive impact than prescribing them a nasal spray.
That's really
So,
interesting.
yeah.
And your books can allow people to have like a little escape from reality, but also bringing up different issues that, really can make you self-examine yourself and your place in the
Yeah, I
world.
mean, hopefully they're really interesting, suspenseful, they're page turners, and they, some people say they've read it in a day or two because,
Ah.
it was just easy to read, and so hopefully it's just fun.
Let's talk about your coaching real quick.
So right now, I'm mostly coaching disgruntled physicians, but I'm not limited to that. I also am very happy to coach writers. It could be how to make themselves just have more confidence. So many doctors just define, I'm a doctor. Okay, you're a doctor. You're a mother. You're a wife, perhaps. Oh, look at that. You're a hiker. You're a singer. You're a chef. You're all these things. You're an animal lover. You're a tree hugger.
Yeah.
Look at all these aspects of your life that make you a complete person. And sometimes it's amazing we can capitalize on some of those other things better than on the career label
Yep.
that we've created. And it really expands our own experience of going through every day.
I've never
So
been a fan of the career label. I feel like it's really just the all encompassing person. So that's nice that you can really help your clients get to that root. All right, it's time for our 5 fast cues of the week. Here we go. Name one thing that these different chapters in your life have taught you.
don't settle. There's too many times in my life where I settled for something and it wasn't really what I wanted. And I ultimately was not happy. So I would say, go deep inside, do a deep dive and find out what you're really passionate about and go for that. And even if it seems really hard, that's the most important thing, I think, because in the end, you're not going to take anything with you in the end. You just want to have lived a good life. And what defines a good life? You want to live a life that you are happy with, that you're proud of.
Would you recommend taking a leap into a big life change to your best friend?
So, yes, with a proviso. If it's something they're really, again, really impassioned by. I'm working as a reporter. And I don't really love it. So I'm going to go get a job as an editor for one of the big traditional publishing houses. But I don't think I'm going to really love that either, but it'll be a change. Don't do that. Only do it if it's something that's really important to you. Like, yeah, this is what I really wanted to do. And if it is, then you have to go for it. You absolutely have to go for it. Don't put it off. Because in 5 years, you're going to be 5 years older, whether you did it or not.
What is one piece of advice that you can give to someone trying to start their second act?
Follow the dream, expect the dream to come true. That's the most important thing. Have faith in yourself, have faith in the universe, have faith in, if you believe in God, if you don't, just have faith in the higher powers of the universe that it's going to happen. Envision it. Write down all the details in the present tense. This is who I am today, as if it were today that you already had it, and meditate on it and write it out and just keep seeing yourself in it and don't give up. And of course, you have to take some action steps too to get there. But inside, really make that, own it, really own it.
What does the next chapter look like for you, Deborah?
Okay, so my goal is to be earning twice my previous full time clinical income just from my books, maybe throw a movie or two in there, being able to speak to people and make a difference. If I can get 2 or 3 people to start thinking in a different way that would be healthier for them, then I could feel like I made a positive contribution to the society. That's what I'd really like to do. I mean, I love this planet. I love the earth. I love animals. I'd love to be able to wake people up and say, be respectful of everything around you because it's all so much bigger than you are. And it gives you so much. And, we shouldn't just be takers. We should be respectful of what we take and give back.
You're doing that with your work. I believe that you're contributing to society, you're helping your community, you're coaching people to bring them to a better place. So you're doing it all.
Well, thank
Where,
you.
where can our audience connect with you?
You can get me at my website, debrablaine.com. From there, you can go onto the coaching page if you're interested in coaching. My Facebook is Debra Blaine, author, physician, coach. My Twitter is at Debra Blaine, MD. And my Instagram is Doc Deb Writer. But you can get to all of those things just by going to debrablaine.com.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much. It's truly inspirational, and I thank you for the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Deborah's success really amazes me. Her trajectory has just changed so drastically, and really what she has cultivated for herself is completely impressive to me. I absolutely loved how she pulled together her medical background and her love for writing, wrote books that kind of combined the two, and really what an accomplished woman with such an impressive story. Be sure to head over to debrablaine.com to dive into her books and learn more about Debra and her journey. My mission with this podcast is to share stories like Debra's so that you can listen and take tidbits of advice and get inspiration and ideas to motivate you to move forward on your own path and to find your own second act success story. I hope listening to this episode helped you with that today and that you feel a little bit more inspired to truly follow your own path, no matter what that is. I encourage you to subscribe to the Second Act Success Career Podcast if you have not already, so that you can catch up on all the episodes that you may have missed. To learn more about this show and my mission for Second Act Success, go to secondactsuccess.co. Make it a great day, my friend, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to Second Act Success. To view show notes from this episode, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments, and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.